everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the 8 books that I read in the month of April. April was a really good reading month, and I actually did make a lot of progress on my April TBR. I had 6 books that I had picked for my April TBR, and of those 6, I did finish 4 of those and also read 4 other books. By way of reminder, those 6 books on my April TBR were The Sound of Light by Sarah Sundin, The Escape by Lisa Harris, The Killing Tide by Dani Pettrey, The Belle of Chatham by Laura Frantz, The Lost Library by Melissa Coslin, and The Bird of Bedford Manor by Michelle Greep. So of those 6, I did read The Sound of Light, The Escape, The Killing Tide, and The Belle of Chatham. So I did complete those from my April TBR, which is pretty good. I did read the majority of that TBR, and in addition, several other books. So let's go ahead and talk through them all. I'll start with the 4 that were on my TBR, and then we'll meander into the other ones that I read for this month. So first we have The Sound of Light by Sarah Sundin. This was another fantastic book by her. I have not read a single book by Sarah that has not been a 5-star. So this is my 3rd one by her in this loosely interconnected standalone series, and I have loved every single one of them. The characters are developed so well, you just get completely sucked into the story. The high stakes really draw you in, and there are some things that happen towards the end of this book that went a little deeper into some areas, even beyond what the first 2 tackled, and all of these, again, are set in World War II, so it's a time of a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of terrible things that were happening during this time period, and you get to see some of those things and how these characters navigate all of that and their strength and their faith and their love for each other to get themselves through these horrible situations. This book actually takes place in Denmark, which was different. I do not see a lot of World War II books that take place in a country like Denmark, but you can see how the war really reached into Denmark as well and started affecting the people who were living there and the things that they had to deal with and the things that they tried to do in order to stand up to the evil that was infiltrating their land. In this book, we follow Henrik and Elsa, and those 2 characters were just so much fun. Henrik actually takes on multiple secret identities throughout the course of this book, and it is really intriguing getting to see how he navigates all of that and the lengths he goes to pretend to be these different identities in order to gather intelligence. Elsa is a physicist, and she's trying to advance her career in that area, and she soon finds herself drawn into the war and everything that is going on, and she actually has a friend who is Jewish, and so she tries to do what she can to protect that friend during the course of this story. Both of these main characters are compelling in their own right, and this one was fascinating. Every time I read one of Sarah's books, I keep saying, oh, I think this one's now my favorite, and oh, just kidding, this one's now my favorite. At this point, it's hard for me to tell because I really loved this one, and there were certain things about it that made me like it even more than the first 2 I've read. Though, when taken as a whole, it's really hard to pick. I would highly recommend her books. Another book I read was The Escape by Lisa Harris. This is the first book in the U.S. Marshals series. This one I have talked about in other videos, so if you've been watching through some of my more recent videos, you've probably seen me mention this series. This book was so good. The 2 main characters are actually U.S. Marshals, and they're transporting a couple of high-profile prisoners across the country when their plane actually goes down. So the adventure starts at that point. One of the prisoners is actually killed in the crash, and that's not a spoiler because it is on the back of the book. But that prisoner is killed, but the other one escapes. And so now they have a fugitive on the loose, and they are trying to find this person. He is highly, highly dangerous, and they're trying to track him down in the wilderness and bring him back into custody. Our 2 main characters in this story are Madison and Jonas, and both of them are phenomenal. I thought they were both incredible characters. Each of them are very talented in their own way, and they really help each other along this journey. And as they go along this journey, of course, they start getting closer to each other and getting to know each other better and better along the way. Though the main focus of the story is to track down this fugitive, there's also a broader mystery that is happening in this one, and something happens in relationship to that one that leaves off on a cliffhanger at the end of this book. So I do caution you, if you pick this one up, you probably are going to want to have book 2 handy because it just leaves you hanging and you're wanting to find out what is happening next. But this was a fantastic start to a new series, and I highly recommend this for a very fast-paced ride. And on to the next one, and that is The Belle of Chatham by Laura Frantz. This book takes place during the Revolutionary War, and I actually haven't had the opportunity to read very many historical fiction that take place during this time period. It's a small handful that I've read before, so this was really fun to get to dive back into that time period and see how these main characters navigate that world. This follows Maybelle, or May, her sister Coralie, and the rest of her siblings. A lot of her siblings are actually a pretty high presence in the course of this book, and then also an American general by the name of Reese. May, along with the rest of her family, are staunch patriots, but her sister Coralie is very much a loyalist, and you see a lot of back and forth and the difficulties that that brings to the family. May, of course, wanted to do everything she could for the patriot cause, and she actually goes through a lot of different things because of this division in her family and trying to figure out how to handle that situation and what to do about it, because it would lead to her feeling divided too because of wanting to help the patriot cause but also not wanting to turn against her sister. So she learns a lot and she grows a lot during the course of this book, and there are things that they have to contend with and things that happen around them that are truly terrible during the course of the war. So you really do get a glimpse into some of the things during that time period, into some of the battles that were fought, and some of the circumstances that the people of that time had to navigate. The historical element of this was very, very well done. So if you want a glimpse into Revolutionary War time, this is a really good one to dive into. And another one I read was The Killing Tide by Dani Pettrey, another first book in a series. This is the Coastal Guardians book one, and it started off really well. I did enjoy this one. It was also fairly quick paced, and I'm looking forward to reading books 2 and 3. In this one, we're following Gabby and Finn and their adventures during this book that culminate in quite an interesting series of events at the end. They were very unique, and so there was a lot that happens at the end of this book. Finn is actually part of the Coast Guard, and he is investigating a death and a missing person who is also part of the Coast Guard to figure out what is happening there. Gabby is an investigative reporter, and she is relentless when it comes to finding out what is happening. And she actually gets kind of pulled into this and partially puts herself into this scenario trying to find out what is going on, because she actually has mutual connections, not only a background with Finn himself, but also other people who were affected by the mystery that is happening that Finn is investigating. Finn and Gabby have to work through some things personally throughout the course of this book, all while trying to track down what is happening and trying to keep themselves alive through the end of the novel. Like I said, I'm excited to read the next books in the series. I think all of these follow different main characters for each of the stories, whereas the one I talked about earlier, the U.S. Marshals, you do follow those same main characters all the way through that trilogy. Another book that I read was Memoria by J.J. Fischer. This is book 3 in the Nightingale trilogy. This was a very well done conclusion to the trilogy. I greatly enjoyed this. There was actually a twist at the end of this that I did not see coming. Like, not at all. It really did take me by surprise, and it's a twist that was building from the very first book. I mean, the seeds were planted all the way back in the first book. And so when it hits in book 3, it was just, I was stunned. I was literally stunned because I did not see that coming. And it's actually something pretty huge to the plot. And then you start seeing like all the threads and all of the scenarios that led to that point. Oh man, that it was something. And obviously I'm not going to say a word about it because I'm not going to give spoilers. This is the third book in a trilogy, so I don't want to really talk too much about this other than saying that it did wrap up really well. There was a lot of adventure, there was a lot of intrigue, there was even more political intrigue that came out in this one, along with things like battles and other stuff that really culminated into some pretty large final events at the end of this trilogy. So this is fantasy. If you're looking for a really fun, clean fantasy trilogy to read, this is a good one. This is Christian fiction, so there are some biblical themes and elements woven throughout these books as well. And next we have a contemporary romance, and that is The Second Story Bookshop by Denise Hunter. And when I found out the reason for the naming of this book, that was really cool. It was not exactly what I thought of when I first saw the title of this, but when I saw why this is called what it's called, it's very, very sweet. I really like the background for the name of this. This book follows Shelby and Gray. They have a fairly extensive past with each other, and so this is a second chance romance situation for the two of them. And Gray ends up coming back to where Shelby lives. They kind of grew up together. He left, and now he returns upon the death of Shelby's grandmother. So Shelby's grandmother actually was the owner of the bookshop that Shelby has been helping her grandmother with for all these years since she was very young. And now that her grandmother has passed, she is taking over that bookshop. But there's something that happens in the first little bit of the book that kind of twists some things, and it actually talks about it on the back of the book, so I feel like I can go ahead and say that. But her grandmother essentially gives half ownership to Gray, so that pulls him right back into the equation with Shelby after she's been trying to move on from that relationship that they had back when they were teenagers. Now, Gray himself was treated pretty horribly by the people in the town where he grew up. And Shelby witnessed some of that during their high school years and always thought it was just awful, the things that he was accused of and how he was treated. And it's interesting to see how when he comes back, even as an adult, those things don't just go away. The townspeople still remember the things that happened back in those days. And so they're also, in addition to trying to figure out the situation with each other and figuring out how to coordinate this half ownership thing, now Gray is also having to deal with all of those things from his past that are just brought right back up to the surface. This book ended up being quite a bit deeper than I even thought going into it. I was thinking, oh, sweet contemporary romance, this is going to be a really just fun read, but this actually goes fairly deep. There's our complex characters dealing with very complex situations. And Denise Hunter did a very good job dealing with those situations and wrapping those up at the end. I really did enjoy this story a lot. And another book is Edge of Truth by Janice Cantore. This is the first book that I have read by her, and I did enjoy it. There was a lot going on in this. I thought she did very well with the mystery. I liked the two main characters. I do feel like I didn't personally connect as much as I would have liked to with this story. I still wanted to finish it. I wanted to read it. I thought the mystery was very well done. There was something, I don't even know how to explain it, but I just personally wasn't connecting super well with the characters as far as being super emotionally invested in their stories. But like I said, it was still really, really good, and I probably will read other books by this author. And I know a lot of people who have read this and absolutely loved it, so I would still definitely recommend it. This is a very fun premise as far as the main female character is having to deal with a current mystery that is happening and kind of a cold case from back when she very first started working in law enforcement. And those two things are just meeting in this book, and you see how they're connected and kind of what actually happened way back long ago and how that is impacting the events happening now. So she is part of the police department's violent crimes unit, and she works with a lot of difficult to figure out cases and things like disappearances. But then very early in the book, her sister actually goes missing. And so she ends up in Hawaii trying to figure out what happened there and where her sister is. And everything that she's being told about how her sister disappeared, especially by her brother-in-law, just isn't adding up. It's not making sense. And so she very quickly starts questioning what is actually going on. During the course of all this, our main female character, Lainey, ends up meeting our main male character, Ben, who is a FBI special agent. And he's actually working to take down a money laundering ring, and suddenly something happens that crosses his case with what has happened to her sister, and the two find themselves kind of thrown together, figuring out why these two things are connected and how her sister and brother-in-law might be involved in all of this. Like I said, I did really enjoy this. This was a very good mystery, and I do recommend it. It just wasn't maybe my favorite read of April, but I did still really enjoy the story. And finally, we have one more fantasy, and that is The Disappearance of Emlyn Dulaine. This is the first book in the Rivenly Sphere by Lisa A. Franklin. And this was a really fun time. This is a YA fantasy. And the whole time, I just kept feeling this like a little bit whimsical vibe to this book. It reminded me, it's quite different from like Alice in Wonderland, but that general feeling of that whimsy and things being a little not what they seem to be and all of that, it just reminded me a little bit of that. And throughout the course of this book, there are nods to a lot of classic stories, especially The Wizard of Oz. And that was really fascinating and so much fun. There's also a pretty good twist in this story that comes out later in the book, which of course I'm not going to say what that is, but she pulls that off very well. And when it came up, I was going, wait, what? But in this story, we're following Emlyn as she is trying to figure out what happened to her sister several years previous, when her sister quite literally just disappeared, just vanished right in front of her eyes. And so she's been trying to figure out where she went. And everyone, of course, thinks she's crazy because nobody's just going to vanish right in front of you. And that's been something really difficult for the main character, knowing what she saw and not having anyone believe her. But then she gets kind of pulled into this magical land and things start making more sense. The side characters that are in this are phenomenal. You have a bit of that found family feel to the characters in this story. The main male lead is also great. And there's a dragon that is part of the story that is just, she's so much fun. And she can actually manipulate her size, which is very cool. The second book in this series is out, and I am very much looking forward to reading it. I want to go back into this whimsical, fantastical world and see what happens next for our main characters. And that's it. Those are the 8 books that I read in April. Like I said, it was a very good reading month. I really enjoyed everything that I read in one way or another. Some of them were very big standouts, but all of them were a lot of fun, and I would certainly recommend all of them. What books did you read in the month of April? Did you have any fun stories that you were able to dive into? Let me know in the comments below what you read and what were your favorites from April. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate you all so very much. And as always, remember to keep following your dreams and believing in the magic of this thing called life. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.